As I sit on the edge of my bed and think to myself, there was a time when people wanted to be known. Now they want to be seen. And there's a difference. Because being known requires truth. Being seen only requires attention. Tonight, I want to talk about something uncomfortable. Not just women selling themselves online. Not just men funding it. Not just social media. I want to talk about what happens to a society when loneliness becomes profitable. Because somewhere along the way, human connection became a marketplace. And now millions of people wake up every morning asking themselves, how do I stay visible? Not how do I become whole, not how do I love better, not how do I heal, just how do I keep people watching me? That's where we are. And I don't think enough people are asking what this is doing to the human soul. There's a book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, that warned us decades ago that entertainment would slowly replace serious in society. Not through force, not through violence, but through distraction and comfort. And if Neil Postman were alive watching TikTok right now, watching live streams, watching people crying out online for donations, watching teenagers measure their worth through likes, I think he'd say the prophecy came true because the internet didn't just give us communication, it created performance based existences. Now people perform their pain, perform their sexuality, perform their morality, perform their outrage, perform their relationships. Everything is content now, even suffering. And the statistics behind this are honestly pretty disturbing. Studies have found teen girls who spend heavy amounts of time on social media report significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, body dissatisfaction, and hopelessness. This is Jonathan Haidt.
Why is it that we're all giving our kids phones at such an early age? Because we're afraid that they will then be left out. And they're afraid of being left out. We're terrified of being isolated, being cut off, being alone. That's why banishment used to be a punishment in the ancient world. Before they had like good prisons and things, like your punishment is to be banished. We're not going to kill you. We're just going to send you away. And that's like death, social death. And teenagers are really, really vulnerable to social death. If people are only supporting something because they're afraid to speak up, or if they're kept in place by fear, as soon as the fear calms, everything can change very, very quickly. The kids themselves say, yeah, I'd like to get off if everyone else does. If a system is held in place by the fear of missing out, and we can all get out together, then kids aren't missing out. We give them back childhood, we give them back play, we give them back each other.
Researchers and psychologists have linked constant comparison culture to declining self-esteem and increased emotional instability among young users. And men are collapsing too. A major survey from the Survey Center on American Life found that 15% of men say they have no close friends at all. Can you believe that? A massive increase from past generations, right? Think about that. Millions of men are emotionally starving in silence. At the same time, millions of women are learning that attention can be monetized instantly. So now we have a culture where lonely men are paying for connection and lonely women are selling versions of intimacy. And both sides are still empty afterwards. That's the tragedy. And that's what's on my mind tonight. This isn't a women bad episode because if men stopped paying for fantasy tomorrow, half this economy would collapse overnight. The algorithm follows desire, and desire follows loneliness. That's the machine. And social media companies understand human psychology better than most governments do. They know outrage keeps you engaged. They know sexuality keeps you scrolling. They know insecurity keeps you posting. They know validation creates addiction loops. Every notification gives your brain a small dopamine release. And eventually people stop asking, is this healthy? They ask, is this getting attention? That changes people. You start seeing human beings as audiences instead of souls. You start measuring your value through reactions. And I think this one is one of the reasons modern relationships are struggling so badly. Because real love is slow, real love is awkward, real love is patient, Connection takes time to build. Real love is boring sometimes. Real love happens in silence. Real love requires sacrifice. But social media trains people to crave constant stimulation, which drives people into depression or anxieties. Constant novelty, constant validation, constant excitement. Some people become addicted to emotional spikes instead of emotional depth, and eventually that confuses attraction with intimacy. Those are not the same thing. You can sleep beside someone and still be completely unknown. You can get 1,000 compliments online and still hate yourself in the mirror. And I think a lot of people secretly do. That's why this conversation matters. And it's awkward. Because behind the filters, behind the money, behind the manipulation, behind the fake confidence, I think there's a wounded generation trying desperately to feel valuable. Some people monetize their bodies because they discovered attention feels safer than vulnerability. Some men drown themselves in pornography and fantasy because rejection terrifies them. Some people scam emotionally because survival and emptiness mixed together can create dark behavior, and the internet amplifies all of it. There's another important book called The Anxious Generation, and I've talked about it several times in this season. One of the major arguments in that book is that smartphones and social media fundamentally reshape childhood, identity formation, self worth, and emotional development. And honestly, I think we're only beginning to understand the damage that's happening and unfolding right before each and every one of our eyes in the world. Because humans evolved into tribes, small groups, face to face interactions, real accountability, real consequences, real touch, real eye contact. It used to be a time in America, if you acted out in school, the teacher got to spank you, and then your parents spanked you when you got home, and you knew better not to act out like that again. Now people spend more time building digital identities than real lives. And I don't say this from a place of superiority or I'm better than everybody or I know something that somebody don't. I've just sat patiently with my thoughts long enough. And I'm part of this too. Most of us are.
I'd share some insights from one of my favorite books titled Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. Postman was an American educator in the 1980s. About the time he wrote his prescient book, he wrote before the advent of smartphones and social media, which makes his cultural observations and prediction back then so fascinating. And today we're diving into one of the most profound insights from Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death.
You all know the feeling of checking notifications, checking views, checking who watched our story, checking whether people care. That's the world we inherited. But inheritance does not mean destiny. And I mean that, you only. And this is part of the episode I really care about because if we understand what's broken, then we have to ask, what heals it? What do we change in society to go in a different direction? Honestly, I think it starts with rebuilding human dignity, loving yourself, honoring yourself. Your body's a temple, not doing this politically, not ideologically, but humanly. We need to teach people they are more than their body, their income, their followers, their trauma, their sexuality, their appearance, their algorithm performance. We need to normalize depth again, normalize loyalty, normalize privacy, normalize genuine friendship, normalize fathers being emotionally present, normalize mothers protecting their daughters from validation addiction, normalize men having emotional intelligence, normalize women being valued for wisdom and character instead of marketability. And men need purpose again here. All over the world they do. Not fake internet masculinity, I'm an alpha. Not domination fantasy, but purpose. Building things, protecting people, creating stable homes, becoming trustworthy. And women deserve to feel cherished instead of commodified, not treated like products. not reduced to content, not pressured to compete for attention in an endless digital beauty contest. Because the truth is, most people don't actually want this culture. They just adapted to it. There's a difference, and that's what technology has done. And maybe the ultimate path forward for relationships is actually very old fashioned in the best way. Smaller circles, more honesty, less performance, less public validation, more real conversation, more community, more accountability, more patience, more commitment, more spiritual grounding, more face to face life is what we all need. Human beings were never designed emotionally process excuse me. Human beings were never designed to emotionally process thousands of strangers every single day. We were designed for connection, real connection, like I said earlier. And maybe the future belongs to the people willing to become real again. Not perfect, real. Maybe the strongest rebellion left in modern society is remaining human, loving deeply, speaking honestly, and that's what a lot of us have to learn. Speaking our truth, protecting your mind at all costs, protecting your dignity, choosing substance over attention because attention fades, algorithms change, beauty changes, age is inevitable. But character echoes through generations. And maybe that's what this episode is really about. Not shaming people, warning people, because a civilization that forgets human dignity eventually loses human connection. And people can survive poverty, people can survive hardship, but eventually people break without love. This has been the You Only podcast, and tonight I just want you to remember something simple. You were never meant to become content for a machine. You were meant to become somebody real. Until next time.